talk about fundamental principles, you heard about Marvel, right? Comics. Now, if you think of Batman, somebody wrote his character. Iron Man, Superman. Let's say Batman doesn't kill anyone. If you noticed, he has a lot of power, but he doesn't kill any of his enemies, right? So they have some fundamental qualities or attributes at the base level, and then they build on the top of it. Even somebody like Rajmouli, he builds the character of a hero and villain in a particular way. Now, for this guy called chartered accountant, these are the fundamental pillars. Now, this is exactly how he's defined. So, once he's defined in a certain way, the professional ethics are useful to maintain his core character. So all the ethics, whether it's Schedule 1 or Schedule 2, each and every clause is all about ensuring these fundamental attributes are not compromised. This is what you have to understand. So whenever you get a slight sense of doubt or hesitation about guilty or not guilty, try to correlate with this. What is getting compromised? Is confidentiality getting compromised? Is integrity getting compromised? Or in the next section, we'll discuss about the threats. There are various threats. What is the threat which is getting affected? That way, it will be easy for you to understand whether he's guilty or not. Largely, it's over and above what is mentioned in the clause, because clause to clause interpretation is very hard to get in a practical scenario. Okay, this is one of the ways for you to understand it. Now, I'll simply give a 2-3 word explanation. Integrity, it's closer to being straightforward and honest. Integrity, when you talk about integrity, is straightforward and honest for you to understand. Next, if you talk about objectivity, not to compromise professional judgment because of bias. So she said it in the right way. So you should not be compromising professional judgment because of some level of bias. Now, anything, I think when Manju was asking you, for a chartered accountant who is an auditor of a particular college, and then he teaches in the same college, now you should understand it could hit objectivity, right? When a particular situation, what is the fundamental principle that situation you're hitting? Then you think of it, is objectivity being hit or not? Now, when you talk about confidentiality, there is no way that somebody inadvertently discloses information which is not to be disclosed. Okay, which is not to be disclosed if somehow they disclose. So if that is the scenario, is there a scenario where this chartered accountant has additional access to information, and is there a chance which will lead to compromise in the confidentiality? So this is exactly how you have to understand. Okay, this is about fundamental principles. Largely, you got it right, but you need to clearly map the situation with this fundamental principle. This is about it. Now let's talk about threats. What are the threats to an auditor? In the given scenario, what are the various types of threats? Can you name some? Write all the threats now. Now keep a heading as threats and write all the threats. So simplify self-interest threat in a single sentence. What is self-interest threat? You write in 2-3 words. Self-review threat. Write in 3 words. Advocacy threat. Familiarity threat. And intimidation threat. Okay, to understand it, I'll simplify it in 2-3 words. When you talk about self-interest threat, it is inappropriate influence of the accountant's judgment or behavior. Self-interest, because of his own influence, it's inappropriate influence of the accountant's judgment. Okay, this is self-interest threat. Now, self-review threat, not appropriately evaluating the results of the previous judgment. It's self-review, not appropriately evaluating the results of the previous judgment. This will explain what is self-review. Advocacy threat. Now, when you're trying to promote the client, your objectivity is compromised. This is advocacy threat. And familiarity threat, you are being over sympathetic to the interest of the client. Just because like a client is familiar, you're trying to be more sympathetic than what is required. Intimidation threat, undue pressure. So intimidation is because of undue pressure. So this will help you understand what each of these threats actually stand for. Okay, so now you combine the fundamental principles, all the fundamental principles, and look at all the threats. So when a particular situation is given, any given scenario which is given to you in the question, you have to map it with either of this. What is getting compromised? You should be able to first go and point out to, because of the situation, one of the fundamental principle is getting compromised. This is one way of looking at it. Other, what is the threat in this context? If you do this quickly for 30-40 seconds, then you come to schedule 1 or schedule 2, then you come to clauses respectively. So fundamental principle, threat, then the clause. So this triple check will help you to understand that whether you know the question or wrong. The problem here is you'll answer something assuming that you're right, but it might be wrong. So you should not know what you don't know, in the sense that you have to understand, okay, after applying all these 3 checks, if you still don't know that, you'll do it in a certain way, approach it with a certain sense of caution. Sometimes you get carried away if you try to memorize the clause and try to trigger something, because most of the questions are asked are exceptions to the clauses which you study. There are always exceptions. Okay, so that way you apply this. Now what we will do is, Manju just ask them some of the questions. Similarly, what has happened. Now let them practically apply it for 5 scenarios, and then we'll look at it once again. Okay? Yeah, let's do that.